How you doing, Jack?
Good. I'm glad to be out of the heat for a couple of hours.
Yeah, good to see you. Good, yeah. Hi, Linda. I don't see Gene Davis yet, do we, Callie?
Right.
Is he there?
Yeah,
there,
he's there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you get to run the Starship tonight or this afternoon, Gene. Your turn.
Is that what it is, or are we running the farm?
Yeah, we're running the farm. That's much more better.
Let's get into the agricultural mood that we're in.
Yeah, move. Yeah.
A lot of things going on. I want to welcome everybody here today. I think we have a quorum, do we? Kelly?
Yes, we still have a couple people coming in, but we have 7, so we're good to go.
We're good to go. So let's take care of the first item of business, which would be approval of our previous minutes. Do I have a motion?
Well, yes, I'd move for approval of the previous local food advisory committee meeting minutes.
And I second.
Thank you. Any questions on the minutes? Any additions, corrections from anyone? If not, I will entertain a aye vote for those in favor.
And be sure to
Aye.
state your name as well. Sorry, guys, for the record. State your name.
Do you want to call the roll?
Maybe
Yeah,
call the
that
vote.
might be easier.
Okay, let's have Kelly call the roll on that.
Okay, so Senator Davis
Here, aye.
and Jack Wilbur,
Aye.
Kelly Pearson,
Aye.
Kelsey Hall,
Aye.
Senator Handy,
Yes.
and Tamara Jorgensen.
Yes.
Did I miss any voting members? Nope. Okay, good to go.
Great, thank you.
Kelly, I think Gina was raising her hand.
Oh, Gina, I don't even. Oh, yes, Gina. Wonder if her audio is not working. Thanks for that catch, Ruby.
No, we can't hear you, Gina, but it shows that you're still muted. On
How
my
about you?
Perfect.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Let's see, I think we have a piece of business that we have to handle, which is the Open and Public Meetings Act report that we need to do so that we're all on the same page and understand what the law is when it comes to open meetings and what we have to record and everything. So,
And
Callie,
really quick,
is that
yeah, really
correct?
quickly, yep. And just before we get started, just so everyone knows, this is a public meeting. It is being recorded. So just know that it's being recorded. It'll be posted on the public notice website. The one thing I wanted to say is we have quite a few presenters today. Google Meets makes it really easy to share your screen. You don't have to be a host or have access. So if you are presenting, it's generally easier for you to present to your own screen. So presenters, if you just move your mouse on the bottom of your screen, there's a little box with an arrow facing up that will allow you to share. So all who are presenting, feel free to share. One thing, Senator Davis, that we need to do, I have on the agenda to hold for a council vote. We need to hold a vote to vote Garrett Hall in as the Farm Bureau representative for the council.
Okay.
So
Is Derek on right now?
I don't see him on, but I did notify him that he was waiting for the acceptance. So he was notified yesterday that he was approved by the governor. So.
Oh, okay. I would entertain a motion to welcome representative from the Farm Bureau.
So moved.
This is Kelly. I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay. And I guess we need a roll call vote on this as well.
Yep. All right. I will go from the top. So Senator Davis.
Aye.
Gina Cornea.
Aye.
Jack Wilbur.
Aye.
Kelly Pearson.
Aye.
Kelsey Hall.
Aye.
Representative Handy.
Aye.
And Tamara Jorgensen.
Aye.
Okay, good to go.
Right. Okay. And welcome him. And as soon as we know he's joined us and we have an opening, we'll have him introduce himself and welcome him to our get together. So.
Great. And then for the Open Public Meetings Act, Senator Davis, Melissa Ure is here. She's going to be presenting instead of Nicole Hanna today to do that Open Public Meetings Act training.
Great. Melissa, welcome. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. I really appreciate you all taking the time to let me talk about these with you. Nicole was really excited to do this for you, but unfortunately she was not able to attend. So you get me. So hopefully I'll be just as entertaining and as informational as what you get from Nicole. So just so you know, I am Melissa Ure. I am with the Attorney General's office. I am assigned to represent UDAF. And we're going to cover a couple of things throughout this training. I know it says 20 minutes. I'm really hoping to keep it pretty shorter than that, because I know we're talking about everybody's favorite topics of open and public meetings. We'll also hit a little bit on the conflict of interests and then GRAMA as well. So hopefully we can get all this training in here. I would like to preface this with, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either Nicole or myself, or reach out to Callie if you need our information for that. We're happy to answer these questions. These are, while they may be a little bit dry and boring, they are extremely important things that we do in order to ensure transparency for the people of the state of Utah, which is what this is really about. So just starting off really quickly, I want to touch on conflict of interests. There are two types of conflict of interest that are important. There are actual conflicts, which will require members of the board to abstain from engaging in certain decisions. And then there are the perceived conflicts, which are a little bit different. So actual conflicts include if a member of the board is an officer, employee, director, or administrator in an organization or business that may be financially or economically impacted by the decisions of the board. That's an actual interest. Also, if a spouse or minor children holds a substantial ownership. This one is a little bit tricky, so please, if you have this kind of conflict, please reach out to Nicole or myself and we will help you with that, because it does depend on what's happening, how much interest, things of that nature. So please, if there's anything of that nature that you're concerned about, and if you have any concerns, please just reach out. We'd rather address those up front than on the back end of things. So if there's anything you're like, wait a minute, reach out and we can help you through that. Also, if a member of the board's immediate family member may be financially or economically impacted in any manner or different from how it would affect the general public at large by a decision that you're making, that's an actual conflict. And then, of course, any personal investments that you may have in an organization or a business that is being impacted by the decisions of the board. I do want to make clear that these are actual conflicts. They do need to be declared. I believe you've all have that declaration form that if needs to be filled out and witnessed and then submitted to Callie, the department will keep that. And then also, if there are actual conflicts, it will come to the Attorney General's office and we will file that to keep it on record. To be clear, just because you have an actual conflict does not mean that you have to withdraw from participation on the board. What it does mean is that you may have to, abstain from making a decision in that specific area that will impact you financially. So, for example, it's best if I give an example. We have the Horse Racing Commission at the Department of Agriculture. There are many commission members on there, some of which are owners of a horse that is racing. So if, for example, that their horse comes up with a dirty test, that goes to the commission to make a decision on, that commission member is still a member of the commission, but will abstain in making any decisions based on that horse, on his horse. So still a member of the commission, still actively involved, but doesn't get to vote in that decision making. So that's really key. These are some of the actual conflicts. Please put them on your conflict form. Please make us all aware of them. This is so you're transparent, so no one questions what's happening, so it's transparent to the people of the state of Utah. Then there are those perceived conflicts. Now, perceived conflicts are just that. They're issues that members of the public may look at and say, oh, there may be a conflict with that. They do not necessarily require you to abstain from anything, but it's worth looking at and making some sort of affirmative statement and affirmatively stating that, yes, there is this perceived conflict, but I know that will not adversely affect your objectivity and that you are independent in making this informed decision. Please, for any type of those perceived conflicts, it's just best to ask questions. It may not be anything, but ask the questions. Never feel like, I don't know, maybe I should just abstain or anything like that. If you have the questions, please just let us know. And then there is also just important to remember that you cannot profit from the information that you are receiving from here, specifically if any of the information, which I don't believe it is, but if possible, that there is private, controlled, or protected information that is shared, that has to be kept private, controlled, and protected, and you can't use that for any fiscal or monetary privileges or anything of that nature. I think you all understand that, but if you have any questions, let us know. Also, if you accept employment that is reasonably likely to impair independent judgment or interfere with the ethical responsibilities and the performance of your duties, please disclose that and come to us and discuss it, and we can help you with that, because those are all prohibited activities. I don't think any of you have any problems with this, but I just want to make you all aware of it. If there's anything that comes up, please come and talk to us. Also, in forms of conflict and on the disclosure forms, there is that idea of gifts. Just generally speaking, say no to gifts. It's just a good idea. There are some exceptions for gift giving, but for food, refreshments, meals that are within per diem, if someone wants to give you a plaque or a memento, those type of things, those are acceptable. But really what I want to stress is that if you are given a gift and you're worried about it, please come to us and talk to us about it. We're happy to help you with that. And then again, stressing that you should have got those disclosure forms or the conflict of interest forms. Please fill them out. Please get them witnessed, and please send them to the department so that we can have them on file. And then if we need to file them with the Attorney General's office, we will do that. that was really quick on the conflict of interest, but I'm also assuming that most of you have been exposed to that. Does anyone have any questions right now? And again, if you don't want to get into the specifics right here, right now, please reach out to us. But if there's any questions, I want to give the time for anyone to ask any questions they may have.
Does anyone have any questions?
Great.
I
Not
don't-
seeing. Okay.
I
I'm
don't
not
see
seeing any. Okay. Sorry, Senator, I keep interrupting you.
Okay. Is there, I see no questions, so thank you, Melissa, unless you have something else.
Yeah, just really quickly, I have open and public meetings, and just to do that, that was just the conflicts. And I'll do this really quickly. Again, the purpose of open and public meetings is to take your actions openly and to conduct deliberations openly so that the public is aware of what their money is going to. And that's really the purpose of open and public meetings. I won't get into the specifics about what is a body and what isn't a body, a public body. This is a public body. It's classified as such by the statute, and therefore, because you are classified as a public body, you are subject to the Open and Public Meetings Act. So that's what it is. Meetings, you have to have a quorum to preside, which I appreciated Senator Davis asking right away whether there's a quorum. You have to have a quorum to conduct business. All business must be discussed in an open and public forum, such as this. I do want to caution very quickly, because we've seen that this has been happening lately, about what's called daisy chaining. If you're making a decision, those decisions have to be made in this public forum. So it can't be very careful, because this has been happening where certain members of commissions will text one other member of the commission and talk about what the decision is going to be, and then we'll be texting another, and so that the discussions on how things are going to happen is happening through text, but it's not enough to consider a body. But that still is an open violation of the Open and Public Meetings Act. So just I wanted to get that out front, because that's been an issue that we've been seeing recently. Just have your discussions in public, in a publicly noticed meeting. So what's the requirements of an open and public meeting? First of all, it must be publicly noticed 24 hours in advance. It must be written notice, which contains the agenda, the date and time, and the location for each meeting. If you are setting annual meetings, that must be noticed in advance, like a year in advance. You put those up right away. That doesn't mean that they can't be changed and the times can't be changed, but if you're having your meetings and they're set annually, you put them up there at the beginning of the year, and then you can change them. But again, it still has to be done in 24 hours, still has to have that notice requirement. So what's required for public notice? It must be posted written notice at the principal office of the public or specified body, or at the building where the body is meeting. So usually that's the Department of Agriculture. So you will put up that agenda and that notice right in front of the building so that people know this is where it is. Because of the nature of this last year and things that have been going on, we are able to hold virtual meetings, but that is done through specific electronic meeting adoption of rules, which the department has done, so you can participate online, but you still have that anchor location. And so notice is provided at that anchor location. Plus, a notice has to be provided to at least one newspaper of general circulation, which is taken care of when we establish this on the Utah Public Notice website. So that's been taken care of. And then, of course, you have to post the notice of the meeting on the public notice website. Public notice includes an agenda that provides reasonable specificity of the topics that will be considered at the meeting. Any public materials provided to the public body concerning matters discussed at the meeting must also be there. So I noticed that Callie was talking about when you have your presentations, please share your screen. All of that material will then have to be put up on the public notice website if it's been shown to the body. It will be shown to the public and has to be posted to that public notice website. And key to this is topics that are not specifically mentioned or mentioned with enough specificity in the published agenda cannot be considered. So it has to have been raised, and you can raise these topics. I want to make that clear. So if it's not on the agenda, but it's raised, you can raise them, but you cannot take final action on them until it's been publicly noticed properly. And so you will have to re-agendize that for the next meeting to take action on that item. Okay, so written minutes must be kept, and audio or video recording must also be kept. The minutes must include the date and time and place of the meeting, the names of members present and absent, the substance of all matters proposed, discussed, or decided, a record of individual members by individual members of votes taken, which is why Callie asked for that roll call vote, because this is a virtual forum. It gets really confusing sometimes about who's voting for what, and to clarify that, roll call vote in these virtual meetings is necessary. It's not so it's not so much necessary when you're all meeting together in the same room, because the person taking the minutes and the chair can recognize who's been voting for and who's against. But in a virtual meeting, that gets very, very hard to do, which is why a roll call vote is necessary. The names of each person who provides testimony and the substance and brief of their testimony, and any other information that any member requests to be entered into the minutes. So pending written minutes they are public record, even though they are pending, and they must be available to the public within 30 days after the meeting. And that was posted again on the public notice website. Approved written minutes are also public records and must be posted on the public notice website within 3 days of approval. So the minutes that were just approved will be available on the public notice website within 3 days. Public materials distributed at a public meeting are public records and must be posted to the public notice website within 3 days. So again, all that material that you're presenting today, please make sure Callie gets that sufficient enough time so that she can post it to the public notice website within those 3 days. All meeting recordings must be unedited recordings of the meeting and must be posted or linked on the public notice website, and that has to be done within 3 days of the meeting. So I need to make this very clear that recordings cannot be modified or corrected or changed to remove any comments ill-advised or otherwise that you might not want out there. Sorry, if you say it in a public meeting, it's going to go out there. So be advised of that, which is why Callie always reminds you that it is being recorded. So be sensitive to that. Also, key to remember is that if you are texting or emailing other members of the board during this meeting, that becomes a public record and is also must be posted to that public notice website. So key to all of this is please just don't text or email each other during a public meeting. That becomes part of the public record. So as I stated before, we have this great function that allows us to meet virtually and also have an anchor location, which is excellent. The department took care of that by adopting a rule. So I'll just pass on to that because we've taken care of that. Closed door meetings. There are very, very specific requirements to be able to go into closed meetings. I don't believe, if you ever want to go into a closed door meeting, please talk to Nicole or myself about whether or not that is allowable. There are very, very few exceptions to that. The courts in particular have been very, very harsh on closed meetings. So just ask before you try to do a closed door meeting. Closed meeting, those do have to be noticed as well in terms of you will be going into a closed meeting. There are specific requirements at that time about record keeping and minutes being kept. So if you ever do need to do that, please just come and ask for advice and we will be happy to help you. Disruptions. A person may be removed from a meeting if the person willfully willfully disrupts the meeting to an extent that orderly conduct is seriously compromised, I urge you to be extremely careful with that. You do have your First Amendment rights, but if you are feeling threatened or anything of that nature, then it is then there are reasons why you can remove someone from a public meeting. But obviously be very careful with that. I think you all know about that. There are violations for this, but I don't think we need to go into those unless somebody has very specific questions about that. But just do know that there are penalties attached to the violation of the Open and Public Meetings Act. That's all I really have. I just want to touch briefly on GRAMA requirements. If you receive a GRAMA request, please notify the department. We can help you take care of that, and the Attorney General's office is happy to assist in that. The one real note that I want to make is that most things are, you know what records are, but personal notes or personal communication are not necessarily considered a record. But the personal communication is only not a record if it is dealing with you in your private capacity. If it's private communication, if it's personal communication dealing with the business of this board or body, then it could be subject to GRAMA. So be aware of that. And the reason why I bring that up is please be cautious about your communication with one another. Because it is subject to GRAMA, think about, before you send off an email, please think about what it would look like on the front page of the Tribune. There's nothing I hate more than going through GRAMA requests and GRAMA information going, oh, I wish we hadn't have said that. But there's nothing I can do about that because that's a public record. So think about that. In general, let's just be kind and courteous to one another and keep our conversations at a professional level. That's really all I want to say about GRAMA, but I'm open to any questions either on open and public meetings, conflicts, or GRAMA, if there are any questions.
Do we have any? I'm not seeing any. So thank you, Melissa.
No, thank you for letting us come and give this training. I appreciate it.
Your presentation. Thank you. Okay. Moving the agenda forward, our next item on the agenda is from Envision Utah and Ari Bruning and Ryan Beck on Utah County Agricultural Toolbox. This is an issue and discussion that we had briefly at our last meeting, and we were asked to carry this forward for this presentation. So with that, do we have our guests on board?
I'm here.
Great. Thank you. And if you would just jump in and let's get started.
Great. Thanks for having me. My name's Ari Bruning. I'm the CEO of Envision Utah, and I've got Ryan Beck on as well, I hope, who's our Vice President of Planning. And let's see if this screen share works here. Okay, so we at Envision Utah, just brief introduction to us. We are 24 years old, founded in 1997. We're a nonprofit and founded by Governor Levitt and others to look at the growth in Utah and figure out how, even as we grow, how to keep this a great place to live. Hopefully you're seeing my screen all right here. And this is the reason we exist. We're a rapidly growing state. For the last 10 years, we've been the fastest growing in the country. Latest projections are that we'll roughly double in population by 2065. And in case you're wondering, our land and our water will not double, and neither will our capacity on I-15. So the idea is to bring everybody together and have conversations about how to manage that growth in light of our constrained resources and make sure that we achieve the future we want to achieve. So in the year 2013, roughly, we kicked off a project called Your Utah, Your Future, where we looked at the entire state and we tackled these 11 topics. You'll notice agriculture was one of them. So we did some polling to figure out what topics were most important to Utahns and picked the topics that way. And then we formed action teams around each topic so that they could gather some data and put together some choices that we could take to the public and asked them which direction they wanted to go. And as we gathered that data, the first thing we found was on this graph on the blue bar, you'll see what percent self-sufficient we are today, or I guess we were in 2014 roughly. And I suspect the Department of Agriculture and Food has more recent and better numbers than these, but the conclusion is probably about the same. And that's that we generally do not grow any of our fruits and vegetables, a very small amount. Dairy, we do a little better. We grow a fair amount of our own grain and protein, although we got to look at that realistically as well, that the protein generally gets shipped out of state before it comes back. So you could argue we're not self-sufficient in that way. And then on this same chart in the orange color is with a doubling of population roughly, that's what percent self-sufficient we will be if we continue to produce the same amount of food. So assuming we still have the same amount of land and water, we become even less self-sufficient going forward into the future, which raises the question, where do we want our food to come from? Elsewhere in the United States, internationally, or do we want to become more self-sufficient as a state? And so we put together some options for how we could approach agriculture in Utah, how self-sufficient we would be by the year 2050. We set a goal for ourselves to have 50,000 respondents weigh in. We achieved that goal, 52,845 weighed in. We did a random sample survey just to make sure we didn't get 50,000 weirdos. Make sure it was representative of the entire public. And here's what the public chose. About 2/3 chose the scenario that had the greatest self-sufficiency of food production here in Utah. And then about almost the entire remaining third chose the second most aggressive scenario for food self-sufficiency. Almost nobody said, I'm okay with just continuing to develop our farmland and not growing our own food and being reliant on other places, which was actually a pretty surprising result for us. We then asked people to allocate 100 points across different outcomes to see what was most important to them. And you can see the top two things that were motivating people were, number one, our food self-sufficiency, and then number two, just the ability to eat locally grown food. People don't want to eat food from elsewhere. And then third was maintaining the open space provided by farms and ranches. And then you can see improving rural Utah's economy. In rural Utah, that did a lot better, by the way. So we saw those results. We also saw this survey result come in. We asked this question, we've asked this question twice now. So in 2007, we asked people if they agreed more with Bailey, who believes that farming and ranching are critical to the future, or do they agree more with Nelson, who believes that farming and ranching are just one of many things that make Utah great and farming and ranching will inevitably decline. And in 2007, we saw about half agree with Bailey that farming and ranching were critical. So pretty strong result. But 7 years later, we asked the same question and 74% thought that farming and ranching was critical. We've seen this change in opinion in Utah, attitude toward farming and ranching, that it's much more important to people than it has been in the past. And you can think about what's happened in the meantime, the rise of farmers markets and so on. There's clearly been a different attitude. And then just another data point. This was in that same survey. We asked people to, I don't understand the math behind it, but the survey company gave them 4 of these different topics, thinking about the future, and had people choose what was most important to them out of those 4 and then what was least important. And you do that enough times, and then they do some math and they allocate 100 points across these different topics. And at the top, you can see things like jobs and economy and water and air quality and education. I was honestly surprised to see agriculture come up that close to the top in terms of how important it was to people. More important than housing and cost of living. That may have changed in the last few years. I don't know. More important than recreation or transportation. It was fascinating to us, the level of support we saw for agriculture. So we took all that data. We worked with our action team to put together this vision for the future, that Utahns envision feeding their families with healthy, high-quality food grown in Utah, essentially. And some high-level strategies were included in that vision for how to do that. And then Ryan's going to tell us a little bit about some more detailed strategies that we worked with Utah County to put together, a toolbox of strategies to help us preserve and protect some of our agriculture as we continue to grow. We're in this position in Utah where a lot of our best agriculture land is also near our population centers where we're growing. So I'm going to turn it to Ryan now to talk about that Utah County Agriculture Toolbox. So Ryan, do you want me to keep sharing my screen, or do you want to share your own?
I will. Thanks, Ari. I think I'll share my own.
Okay.
All right. So, all right. Let me know. Can you guys all see my screen now or no?
No.
Yeah, not yet, Ryan.
No. Okay, let me try again. Let me cancel out of here. I guess, Ari, maybe let me try one more time. Oh, there it is. It appeared that time. Okay. Hopefully you can all see it now. All right. Sorry for the delay. So yeah, I'm going to focus in on this Utah County Agriculture Toolbox, which it was a collaboration between us at Envision Utah, Utah County, but also the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. Commissioner Luann Adams and Scott Erickson, Deputy Director Scott Erickson, helped us out quite a bit with this. So let me just jump right in. So Ari mentioned the population growth in Utah. Well, the Utah County may be the crosshairs of growth for Utah. You know, we're looking at about just over 600,000 people today in Utah County. That is expected to double by 2050, and by 2060, it's expected to have another 1 million residents in Utah County. But also, Utah County does really well in cash receipts. They're always competitive with, it feels like it flips back and forth between Beaver and Utah County. But as of when we were doing this, Utah County was #1 in the state in ag receipts and ag sales, with about 190 million ag receipts. So it's the crosshairs of growth. And what's amazing to me, kind of an aha moment I had, is that, of course, I knew that Utah County was, ideal for growing a lot of different things. But, the cherries and the fruits and the microclimates for the pears and the apples, it's just incredible. And then, look at some of these acres, though, on the screen here. These are not a lot of acres, that we're talking about. Look at #1 for pears. 73, we had 73 in 2002, and we decreased to 48 acres in 2012. Now, that's the real takeaway there is, to me, is that every acre matters, and we don't want to lose any acres of this, of this production, especially in the fruits and vegetables. So we can map it. This is the water-related land use layer. We can easily map where the land is, the irrigated farmland, the prime soils, the non-irrigated. We know what the crop types are and where we're growing them. For the most part, this changes a little year to year, but for the most part, we know where we need to preserve and protect. And, look just south and east here of Utah Lake. That is a prime spot. The water's there, and, it's currently, a lot of hay and alfalfa is being grown in that area. So we know where the crop types are. But look at these trends. These trends are frightening to me. This is, we all feel this growth in Utah County. This is Lehigh. So in these red highlighted areas, that was ag land, prior to 94 to 2005. We lost that ag land 94 to 2005. In yellow, we lost that ag land, 2005 to 2015. And what we have in the green is our remaining ag land. So we can see these trends, these development trends are gobbling up our ag land, which is, we have to live somewhere. But we have to strike this balance of where we live and where we work and, our agriculture. So that's Lehigh. This is a little further south in Spanish Fork. This trend is hitting Spanish Fork by all means, but it is not quite as rapid as we saw in Lehigh. This is Spanish Fork, but here is Payson. So, we can track this stuff. We know the trends here. So Utah County came to us and said, hey, agriculture is really important to Utahns. It's really important to Utah County residents. So help us out with a toolbox, an implementation toolbox. And what we really, this is ground we need to be very careful with, because there's obviously property rights involved. There's farmers and ranchers who have worked their whole life, and they deserve to retire too. So we had to position this as a toolbox of options. I'll repeat, options to help these landowners when deciding on the future of their land, and if they want to preserve and protect this agricultural land for generations, that we give them some tools to do that. So I talked a little bit about this on the last slide, but it was about protecting property rights and talking about Utahns' values and respecting the landowner's desires and not taking away options from them. So we went through a process, and I don't know how many meetings we had, but many meetings with stakeholders. And what was unique, I feel like, about this process is we just didn't get policymakers and government officials here, but we really made a huge effort to get the farmers and the ranchers out to these meetings. So they could help. They're the experts. We needed their help and their advice and what they were looking for. So we went through many meetings, and at the end of the process, we really came up with two main goals. And one was to work to make agriculture more economically and socially viable in Utah County, economically and socially viable. But then number two was encourage development patterns and implement measures that support agriculture at the land and the water resources. So two goals that we came up with. I'm going to, underneath those two goals, we have 33 strategies, and I'll give you the link or tell you where to go at the end, but I don't have time, obviously, to get to all 33 strategies, but I did want to hit a couple of highlights, what I felt like were highlights of these strategies anyway. So goal one, work to make agriculture more economically viable in Utah County. Now, to me, this comes down to, and we heard this time and time again, right? How do cities treat agriculture? Is it a holding zone? Is it a holding zone that will eventually be converted into higher and better use in order to provide revenue for the city? Is that what it is? Or is it an important resource that needs to be preserved and protected? And I think I'm preaching to the choir a little bit with, we think it's an important resource, but how do cities treat agriculture? So it's really important that the cities know how important agriculture is to Utah and Utah's future. But no place, we couldn't find any place that was doing better than Santaquin, Utah, in their preservation efforts. So I won't dig into the details here, but they really addressed in their plans, this need for agriculture and this need for locally grown food and agriculture sustainability. So look to them as a great example. But some of these strategies that we talked about, a lot of people find, they work maybe a different job during the day and they grow hay and alfalfa, and there's nothing the matter with that. That's great. That keeps the land in agriculture. There's nothing but if we want to make it a little bit more economically viable, shifting to high value specialty crops, apricots, lavender, peaches, herbs, things like that, might go a little bit, in terms of the economical, really help push that goal. So, not an easy shift. I don't mean to shortchange it and say that's a very easy shift, but these specialty crops seem to be where the money's at. So we mapped this. There's about just under 40,000 acres in Utah County in alfalfa production, and these may be places that we could grow fruits and vegetables. They've generally got water on the land. They're uniquely situated. I'm not saying all, but maybe we could make it a goal to shift a small percentage of that 39,000 acres into fruits and vegetable production. So it was a goal. It was a strategy that folks came up with. I thought it was a pretty good one. But we also heard a lot about food distribution systems, whether it's the more industrialized food system with the larger scale stuff or the local food systems. What we really heard is it's one thing to be able to grow fruits, nuts, vegetables on the land. It's another thing to be able to to be able to get those out, get them out to market. And so we heard a lot about, what we heard. It was, 40 and 50 and 60 years ago, there were the distribution centers set up to help support the farmer get their product out, and that a lot of those have disappeared. So if we could bring some of those back, it would encourage more farming and just support the whole program quite a bit more. So this is an interesting statistic. I'm sure you've heard it. The average age of a farmer is, getting older. I think in America, I don't know, this is a couple of years old, but the average age of a farmer in America is over 58 years old. So really the question to me is, how do we get new farmers into farming and onto agriculture lands and agriculture-based business? And what we heard is that these new farmers face numerous hurdles when they're trying to buy land and get credit for that land. So digging into that, the toolbox digs into that, but there's challenges to get over, but working on that aspect could go a long way to bring these new farmers into the fold. Okay, goal 2 was about land use patterns and land use patterns that support agriculture in Utah County. Now, I have a couple of crude graphics. I apologize, I'm not a graphic designer, but we at Envision Utah spend a lot of time talking about our development footprint and how good a compact development footprint is for open space and agriculture, and and other things like infrastructure. Not being wise with our infrastructure. So this process of developing infill, underused parcels, or vacant within the existing urban areas, goes a long way to help saving that land on the urban edges. So here's some interesting growth patterns I wanted to put out for the group to see. So in these next few slides, they all have about the same number of housing units, same number of lots, but you can see that our development patterns. This one that I'm going to show you first is large lots. This one, if we're developing half acre to what I would call a ranchette, 5 acres, we have 145 lots and about 29% open space. So we develop in a little bit different pattern. This would be a cluster style. We have even more lots. They're smaller lots, 1/3 to an acre, but we have 72% open space, which could be used for open space or agriculture or what have you. Here's the town style, 200 lots, some townhomes. Maximum lot size would be 1/3 of an acre, and we 79% open space. And then the city, which is the highest density, which I can appreciate that not everyone wants to live in the city style of development patterns, but you can see that the compact development is really good for conserving that open space and in turn agriculture. So just an interesting way to illustrate how we grow matters. Our development patterns matter. I talked about cluster development. We heard quite a bit about farmer, he or she hits 65 years old and wants to retire, and that is great. Everyone's worked hard and they deserve to retire, and they have property rights, so that is within their rights. But we suggested this tool of a cluster development, which maybe allows landowners to develop their land and concentrate the development, the housing on smaller lots, higher density, on a smaller portion of the tract, leaving quite a bit of the land in agriculture that then they could be recorded by easement or deed restriction or something of that. So again, an option that might be available, and a tool you'll find in the toolbox. I think you've all heard about transfer of development rights, TDR programs. I'm not going to get into the details. It's a good tool. I think what we struggle with TRD is that while there are local examples and there are national examples, it is pretty difficult to find one that is a successful example of conserving that agricultural land. But it is a tool. It is probably worth exploring. Another tool that we looked at, there's a lot of places in Utah County that are zoned Ag 5, Agriculture 5. And what we found is some of the trends. Well, it's good, for some of these hobby farms. I'm looking at this picture on the right. You know, that's a beautiful home. It's probably it's great for a hobby farm, but what it's doing is chewing up the land a little bit and taking you know, taking us out of these large areas of farmland that are large swaths that keep, you know, production farmland, commercial farmland. So it's a kind of a change of a way of thinking about zoning. What we think maybe is preserving our agriculture heritage and our agriculture character of our community. This Act 5 may actually be a detriment to us. So worth looking into. That option is obviously a very controversial one, and you can probably think of 10 questions with regards to that. But looking at my time, what I want to really say is that we do have this, all those 33 strategies, those 2 goals and those 33 strategies at on our website, utahagriculture.org, where you will find this whole toolbox. And yeah, so with that, let me jump back. With that, are there any questions that REI can answer before we spend 30 seconds telling you about your Utah, your future refresh that we're about to kick off this fall?
Do we have any questions, Steve?
Yeah, I do.
Representative Andy?
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you, Ari and Ryan. Have you ever heard of the Local Food Advisory Council? You ever heard of us?
To be honest, I hadn't heard
Yes.
of it a few months ago.
That's too bad, because we've been at this about 3 years, and this is absolutely amazing information, exactly what we've been working on, trying to, you know, I mean, ag land preservation, protect urban farmers, understand the challenges of local producers and distributors. We have all kinds of things going regarding what's called a food hub. We've done some appropriations from the legislature on what's called double up food bucks to drive people to farmers markets and to add to their SNAP benefits. We're working on an initiative that we'll talk about later on in the agenda called Farm to School, getting local produce into our school lunches and breakfasts. And so we've got 4 or 5 subcommittees and that we're working on. This is absolutely amazing. And thank you, Linda, for the heads up to invite them here today to talk to this. We need to work together and lean on your great resources.
Great. Yeah. Sounds like
We
you're doing
definitely-
great.
What do you think, Gene? What do you think, Gene?
Absolutely. You know, this information is really key to what we're about. And it's how do we spread it around the state? How do we keep agricultural viable? How do we make sure that growers get their products to market? Even the small people. I mean, you know, there's a lot of urban farmers that have produce and meats to get to market. And the bottom line is there's no way to do that, because we have a lot of shortages in the agricultural field, like processing plants, distribution plants, things for the small guy. The big guy has what they need, but the small agricultural entrepreneurs, if you will, are the ones that are suffering the most.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
So you're
So let
welcome.
me-
We're going to be meeting
Well, we appreciate.
every other month, and you're invited to join us at any time. It's an open public meeting. And if you have something to contribute, we try to keep it open enough and casual enough, our discussions, that we can take the input from everybody.
Well, we are happy to join. I'm happy to join for sure. And let me just end one by saying thank you for the time on the agenda today. But 2, Ari mentioned this Your Utah, Your Future project. That was about 5 or 6 years ago. We are looking at refreshing that vision, including the agriculture vision, updating and refreshing that. We will kick that project off sometime this fall. So I expect there's many people on the call today that we would love to have involved with our working groups and our stakeholder groups. So you may be getting an invite in the coming months, and please join us for that.
We'll put that down on our future agenda list to include you into that discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beck, Mr. Bruning. Thank you, Envision Utah, for this insightful presentation today. We thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I noticed that our new commissioner is on board. I don't know if everybody has had the chance to meet Mr. Butters or not. Are you still aboard? Maybe.
Yes. Yes, I'm here.
Great, Craig.
Got my volume turned up, and I'm walking laps around my kitchen, so I'm listening. But it took me a while. It took me a while to get back on here.
We want to welcome you as a participant into our LFA, Local Food Advisory Commission, and
You.
hope that we're strong on believing that agriculture in Utah needs to be furthered in many, many ways.
Yes, I agree.
So let's move the agenda now. We wanted an appropriations update. The Utah Produce Incentives, Natalie Lutz from the Utah Department of Health is on with us. And Natalie, if you would.
Sure. Thanks, Senator Davis. I'll have a quick update. So our Double Up Food Bucks program for the 2021 season has officially started. And we don't have all of our markets operating yet because some of them don't start until July or August, but we do have quite a few. And I do have just a comparison of last year. So this is as of last week, where there's, we only had a week or two under our belt for most of the markets. But we had done $5,423 in SNAP as of last Friday so far this year. And compared to that same time frame last summer, it was 1,442. So, quite a bit different this year, which is really exciting. And we're really excited to see what the end numbers look like this summer in SNAP and Double Up redemption. Like I think I mentioned last meeting, we've got 10 new markets this year. We're working with CSAs that we haven't worked with before in the past to offer SNAP and Double Up to CSA customers. And so far things are looking really good. So I think it's going to be a great season.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions of Natalie? Her appropriation and the Double Up Food Bucks? I don't see any right off.
Great.
Thank you, Natalie.
Yeah, thank you.
And now let's go to Linda Gilmore to give us an update on the funding for the Food Hub.
Thank you, Senator Davis. Let's see, I am presenting. There we go. So Utah is one of the few states in the nation that don't currently have what we call a food hub. And so I want to take just a minute to just do some education for those as a review and for those that this is something new to. Food hubs are innovative distribution centers that connect small to medium-sized producers with retail, wholesale, and institutional markets that would otherwise be inaccessible. Food hubs bring multiple smaller producers together to pull their goods and fulfill larger orders. And some food hubs provide minimal processing and or cold storage facilities. And this is a nice graphic if this is new to you. The food hub, this might be in the Wasatch Front, but a central location in a region or a state with hubs around the state in different areas where food is being produced. And the food hub aggregates, distributes, co-packs, processes, provides marketing support and access to larger buyers, And for the farmers and ranchers, what's in it for them? They get additional revenue streams and more time on the farm instead of, multiple pickup trucks going back and forth every day from rural areas to the Wasatch Front. We have a more innovative and streamlined system. And so thanks to the Local Food Advisory Committee and Representative Handy and Senator Davis, they have worked for several years to get an appropriation through traditional means as a one-time startup with a higher amount. And Senator Davis just finally said, okay, I'll go through appropriations. And so we have $112,500 in seed funding to use toward the development of a food hub that will do this connection that we've been talking about. So our office has spent the last few weeks and a month or two in preparing a grant. And so because it's an appropriation and because it was listed as one or more food hubs, we have put together an entire program. And you can go to our website. It's easy to find. Just go to ag.utah.gov. You can click on Marketing and Economic Development, and the drop-down list will bring you to this page. It also has a very easy URL, which I'll tell you about in a minute. Let's see, maybe let me go back. Okay, I thought we do have a URL, so I'm just going to go back if somebody wants it. The URL is at the bottom of the page, ag.utah.gov/food hub grant. So all one word, /food hub grant. If you want to print this off or use this graphic, that's available for you as well. And there is on the site, there is the date, let me just bring that up. It's open on July 1, and the final date for application is August 27th. And we do have a little click here with a sample application. So that should be helpful to people that want to apply or consider applying. And then I'd just like to open it up if there are any questions or next steps. We do invite you to spread the word. We have a press release that went out today. We have a banner on our main ag.utah.gov page, the department page, and we will be putting social media out on our various social media platforms. Any other thoughts that you might have or questions?
Linda, thank you. I think one thing to point out is, $112,000 that we have in that grant is not a tremendous amount of money when you figure what it costs to put together a food hub. I just received some data from New York City and a food hub that they're building there. It'll be a 60,000 square foot building. Of course, the food hub wouldn't be that big here in Utah, but it's projected to cost upwards to $30 million to get it up and moving. And when you take a look at a food hub and you realize you have to have some property, you have to be able to have, the reason we've been talking, at least Representative Handy and I have been talking about doing this in a not-for-profit type venture is really so that we get the producers and those receivers on a board to be able to talk about what is needed and everything. So this is a very important first step that we hope there's more money coming in. I know the commissioner, Mr. Butters, has asked through the Department of Ag for some of the APA money, if I can use that word. I don't think that's what they're calling it now anyway. The COVID relief money, next step that we still have in the state of Utah, has been asking for some more food hubs. And it's a very expensive process. And we're probably going to need GOED to be a part of this venture as well. So we're probably going to have to branch out. It's going to be a very, very expensive, just if when you figure that just one in the Bronx out of all of New York State is a $30 million project. And that doesn't take care of all of the agricultural or the needs within the city of New York City. And of course, they have many, many million more. So anyway, hope that we get the folks who are serious about really investing in and we want to see that investment grow, so the food hub is really serving the people that need to be served. Representative Haney, did you want to add?
Yeah, I didn't want to say anything. I wanted to say to Ryan and Ari, hopefully that, I mean, this is something we've been working on for 3 years, and we started out with a appropriation request a lot bigger than this is, but this is what we got. And, kudos to Senator Davis for being the champion this last legislative session to get what we got. But this would go a long ways, and if you could have multiple of these, it would go a long ways to accomplishing the and solving some of the issues that you have raised in your study. Where local producers, they can get their product to market, make it more viable. And Jack and others who are the small producers, I think it'd be great for you to weigh in, and then Commissioner Butters, if you're still on, or Kelly, to say what the Ag Department is trying to do with some of the ARPA money, trying to enhance this. And Linda, also, how many respondents do you think, we know of a couple out there who are looking at this, but how many people do you think, respondents do you think you'll get on that little chunk of dough?
I expect it to be small, but I see this as an opportunity to educate the public for the need of a food hub, and also what a food hub is, because I think that's been the hurdle that both of you have met when you've tried to go after this funding. People just don't understand it, both legislators and farmers and ranchers. So I think through this process, it's been a great opportunity to educate, and continues to be.
The state of New York has actually allocated about $15 million for the food hub. Plus they have tax credits they're offering and everything else to get that one food hub up and built. So this is only the beginning request of really what, to be able to bring food from the small guy to the marketplace is very, very important. So we're hoping we have the participation from the farmers, that we can hang on to the land. As was pointed out in that Envision Utah discussion, was the fact that down in Utah County, which the population is growing very, very rapidly, and the land that is going right now is the irrigable land in that county. That's the first to go. And we've seen that also here in Salt Lake County. We're seeing it up in Cache Valley, throughout the state of Utah, where we're seeing growth. We're losing agricultural lands, and we've got to figure out how do we preserve that and how do we take care of it so that we have some self-sustainability. Did you want to say something, Commissioner Butters?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the ARPA funding, or the Rescue Plan Act funding, and the department, our request is for some infrastructure. I like to call it agri-structure, and we've kind of met a situation where most of that funding has been put into buckets, and we realize that our request for infrastructure, similar to what a food hub would require, is not really in keeping with what the current round of funding is. But federal funding, we're hoping to see another round of funding for agricultural infrastructure. So we will keep our eye on that, and hopefully we can tie that into the request for some funds for a food hub. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. And thank you for that presentation, Linda. And moving the agenda forward because of time more than anything. We need to cut back on the agenda items so that we can have more time for discussions. Is one of the things that we always run into in what's going on. But we want to, Kate, are you there? And incentivizing local purchasing for schools.
Yes, I am here. So yeah, I wanted to start with some good news for anyone that hadn't heard, but next school year, for the first time, Utah is going to be directly funding some farm to school efforts. So we were able to allocate $250,000 internally at USBE from our state liquor tax that we receive, that we're going to use to reward schools that buy Utah grown unprocessed agricultural products. So we tried, I think a lot of people on this call know, we tried for a couple years to get some appropriations for that and weren't successful. But I do want to emphasize that that was a necessary step to getting the money this way. It really raised the visibility of that request, and it gave it a lot of legitimacy that it didn't have when it just came from me. So, and where was I going with that? Yeah, so the reason we were able to do that internally this year was actually because of a legislative change for school breakfast. And it required USBE to rewrite our board rule for how we share out our liquor tax to schools, which previously every schools get a per meal amount of federal reimbursement, and they also get a per meal amount of reimbursement from the state, which is what we use the liquor tax for. Every school's gotten the same amount of money historically per meal, regardless of how good or bad their meals are. So what we're going to do starting next school year is it's going to be based on the percentage of their total food spending that they spend on Utah grown products. We don't have the exact numbers sorted out yet because we're waiting on some data. But for example, if a school spent 10% of their food budget on or less on Utah grown food, they'd get a baseline reimbursement. And then if they spent 10 to 20, they'd get an extra 10 cents. And then 20 to 30, maybe they'd get an extra 30 cents. So we're really excited to see how that pans out. I did have the food service director actually from Emory School District emailed me this week and said she already ordered apples from Santa Quinn for next year because of it. So I'm optimistic. It's a baby step. Before I talk about the other stuff, do people have any questions about that piece of it?
Thank you.
All right, so then the other drum I'm always beating.
Got
right?
more.
This is the other piece, right? Is that the perception of farm to school in Utah has just really been for a long time that it's like an extra, it's a fun promotion, or even just like that's for the hippies in California and Vermont, and we don't do that here, which is wild because supporting agriculture should go really well with Utah culture. But we just really haven't done a good job of sharing that message and really institutionalizing it as something like we do in Utah. And one of the things that there's data that really shows that helps with that is having that become part of your state agencies and really making farm to school a priority at a state level. So I mentioned in our last meeting that I'd love to see a farm to school bill that created positions like mine at other state agencies so that I'm not the only one out there. Because the truth of the matter is, like, I could spend all my time just working with schools, but somebody also needs to work with farmers and somebody needs to work with everybody else along the supply chain. And there's lots to do to move this forward. So I know I met with some folks at UDOH to talk about what that position might look like for them. And UDAP folks, I know we're meeting on Monday to talk about that. But we'd really like to see this move forward where we could get some more positions created and have that support happen at the state level. And then also the other thing that really can help coordinate farm to school efforts is a state farm to school network, which we have. It's our Farm to Fork Task Force. But again, I'm the only one who really gets to invest my time in it. So everybody else attends when they can. And so it'd be awesome to have like a bill that formalized that and directed, hey, we're going to have these different people that are going to be part of this group and direct that group to have a state strategic farm to fork plan, that kind of thing. I think would really help get us more buy-in and move forward with that.
So I'll just pick up there. So Kate has been talking to me, and I do have a bill going that Senator Davis and I will work on there. If we're going to be adding personnel, there's going to be a fiscal note going with that, but we're going to take a run at this. And sometimes these things take a while, but we're going to need that data that Ryan and Ari have provided for us, and the other data that we know about what Utahns want. And if we're going to be able to satisfy them, and to preserve ag land, to promote the growing and distribution and consumption of local produce, then we're going to have to do these things. And so that's what we're going to take a run at, right, Kate? Yeah.
Yes, and I was so happy to see that data, because that presentation are all things I say, but then I never have anything to back it up in my opinion. So always feels good to be validated and right and have some graphs you can show for that. But yeah, I mean, I think we really need to start framing farm to school as a really powerful lever to create a better food system in Utah. And I think this is a really good time to have that conversation. A lot of people are, you know, the silver lining of the last year, I know we've said it before, but a lot of people are more aware of some of the holes in our supply chain and some of the issues with food insecurity. So I think this is a good time to jump on it, even if even if we aren't successful the first time. I know asking for money is always tricky, but I think at this point, honestly, even the more conversations that are happening up in the Capitol about farm to school, like, that's a win right there, right? The more people that start to know about it and start to think about it and start to get a hold of that vision, long term, that's what happened with the appropriations. You know, we didn't get it, but it became enough of a conversation that there was enough support to make it happen another way.
So we're working on it, and we're going to go in front of the school board at some point when we've got kind of, you know, sometime this fall maybe, and talk to them about it and kind of try to get their endorsement and their blessing. So Kate's going to do a few more little things, then she'll get with us and let us know when we're ready to start engaging the drafting attorney.
Yes, yep. And once we really start moving forward with it, the thing I will need, honestly, the most help from this group as a whole with is like championing it too, because you know, once we present to the state board, then and if they approve it, which I think we have an excellent chance there, if they give their support, then I can at least express a position and advocate for it. But that's not my whole job, it's only me. So really that's going to need a team effort. We're going to need, I've talked to people about putting together kind of a little team that can champion it through, but we're going to need champions from all of you, championship from all of you.
What we can do to assist in getting this into the state board's budget that they will present to the legislature for funding. That's probably one of the areas that we need to go to be able to get that funding really started. So whatever we can do, Representative Handy and I will more than happy to further nutrition for children. And thank you. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
We're in the middle of a very severe or extreme drought over most of the state of Utah, as you've already heard. And so we wanted to bring up a drought condition update. We've asked Utah State University and member Ruby Ward and Anastasia Thayer-Hassett, and from the Department of Ag and Food, Jay Olson, to address us on this issue. So I'm going to go to Ruby. And Ruby, if you'll begin this discussion, please.
So I was approached and I said, really, it shouldn't be me. It should be my wonderful colleague, Anastasia Thayer-Hassett. And so she's here today, and she's an economist, but she really deals with this area a lot more. And so I'm not going to take up any of her time, and I think I'll just turn it over to her. And so go ahead, Anna.
Great. Thanks so much, Ruby. I'm going to try to share my screen here because I think the best way might be to take a look. Can you all see that?
Not yet, but sometimes it takes a minute.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, great. And then I'm going to enter presentation mode. Okay, so hopefully, Ruby, thank you so much for the introduction and invitation today. I'm just going to kind of jump in here. And I think at this point, everyone has probably seen this U.S. Drought Monitor map of our current conditions, probably more than we would like this time of year. And I'm not going to spend too much time kind of talking about this map, but I would like to, for me, what I'm kind of paying attention to as we move into the summer months here is how some of our land area is going to be moving into the extreme and exceptional drought categories. And we can kind of see even from where we were at 3 months ago, we have more of our land area in this exceptional drought. And that's going to come with a number of issues that we may want to be aware of and talk about. Hopefully, you've been thinking about this and aware of the drought conditions this year. And if there are any producers, you're aware of it and you've been kind of thinking about planning for your operation. For me, in addition to thinking about how the conditions are going to change throughout the summer, I really have tried to kind of pay attention to, what conditions were last year, right? And so, up here in Cache County, we haven't, the conditions aren't so much different from where we were last year, but really across the state, these drought conditions are really, really quite exceptional. And I think that can be presented most clearly when we look at kind of the historical severity as well as extent of drought. And so I don't know if folks have seen this yet or how much you've seen this, but back earlier this winter in late fall, I was really pointing to some of the drought conditions that we saw here in the early 2000s, and really the severity this year is so much more severe than what we saw even in the early 2000s, as well as the length of time. And you can kind of see that with kind of the darker red here. So they're recording weekly. And so really I've tried to, in the way that I've approached this, in the way that I've tried to get some information out, is to try to kind of accept where we're at, work with other colleagues to think about what folks can do on the ground to kind of manage and prepare and plan their risk management strategies around this drought, because it is so widely present across the state and it is so intense. But also really start thinking about why we, what are some of the factors leading to that drought monitor map. And one thing is our statewide precipitation. If you've kind of been following the snowpack this year, our snowpack, really was not enough to kind of bring us out of these drought conditions, as well as our precipitation. This is looking at precipitation as a percent of normal. Last month, we were sitting at 42% of normal precipitation, and then overall for the water year, we're at 66. And so in general, we just haven't had that precipitation. We didn't have that snowpack to kind of bring us out of those drought conditions so far this water year. And I think that really we can see kind of just how severe the drought is when we start thinking about some of the soil saturation. And again, that's another kind of indicator that we might want to start tracking here or start thinking about. And so what we are looking at is soil saturation from a couple. When we start thinking about the sites or the kind of the places that we're monitoring, we can monitor in the valleys, and then we also have some monitoring sites up in more mountainous conditions. And so, across both of these areas, we're really seeing that soil saturation really just quite low, right? Which again, makes sense. We haven't had the precipitation. We didn't have the snowpack. And so when we start thinking about what that's going to mean for conditions on the ground, we're really going to have to see, again, quite a bit of precipitation to kind of help bring us out of these really, really dry conditions that we see across the state. I've been also kind of tracking water availability and thinking about our reservoir storage. And so again, this probably is not going to be any surprise, but in 10 of the 18 basins that we're tracking water availability, we're really seeing super dry, historically low levels of water availability. And in terms of our reservoir storage, I'm using information that came out in early June here, but our reservoir storage is down currently 15% lower than last year, and that's decreasing. So we're really concerned about water availability. We're concerned about the stream flow. We're not getting the precipitation. That soil saturation is really, really low. And it doesn't look like it's improving. I will say I have a little bit of good news in that those La Nina conditions, I don't know if you're aware of that, but La Nina conditions throughout the winter, but we're back into an ENSO neutral forecast, which should hopefully give us at least a little bit of a reprieve for the summer months here. But if we look at June, we're really projecting, increased probability of above average temperatures and then below average precipitation for the northern part of the state here. So again, as we move into the summer months, unfortunately, we're going into it super dry, really unprecedented drought for the times that we've been monitoring, and it doesn't look like it's going to improve. I will say, if you kind of want to take that and start maybe expanding or thinking about a little bit broader, I'm also kind of concerned about, drought throughout the country right now, and in particular the Southwest, right? And so trying to kind of keep watch on what is happening throughout the rest of the country that might have an impact for some of our agricultural producers here. So one thing I kind of watching is hay areas in drought, right? We have a lot of hay production in the state, and thinking about how some of the drought across the country might impact some of the hay prices. So what we can see here is that, again, because we're moving into these summer months, because that drought is expanding across the country, we're seeing a bit of an uptick here in the percent of our hay acreage that's in drought. If we then look at our alfalfa acreage, right, some similar story here, 57% of the alfalfa hay acreage in the US right now is experiencing drought, and that number is just increasing, again, especially as we move into the summer months. So hopefully, if you're a producer in the state, you've kind of been thinking about drought for a while now, you've been doing some planning and some management of that, because really the story isn't improving here, right? Especially as we go into these summer months. And so again, cattle acreage, we're sitting at 33% of the cattle inventory right now in the country is sitting in drought. And again, that number is slowly starting to creep up here as we move into the warmer summer months. The last bit of hopefully not great news for everyone out there. If we start looking at our range conditions, right? And I know that folks out on the ground are seeing, the very, very poor conditions here. And that's reflected here. And I know that folks on the ground see this. We've been talking about it in the news. This should be no surprise. But for me, those are kind of some things that I've been watching. And unfortunately, I don't have a great outlook for you. I would like to put a small plug in for a monthly report that I put out with another extension specialist and economist in our department, Ryan Larson, where we kind of bring together the weather and a drought report, as well as some market conditions for folks. So with that, I will kind of leave you with my email address. If you have any questions, please let me know, and feel free to try to clue into our monthly outlook, and hopefully that will give you some more information. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Anna. And we appreciate that report, even though it was a little depressing.
It certainly is this time of year.
It doesn't look very nice at all going forward. I mean, because of course, 10-year weather is a cycle that then adds to the next 10 years to look at and see what's happening.
I think folks were really hoping that we might see some better conditions here, as the snow started falling, but those precipitation numbers and that snowpack just didn't lend itself to helping us out at all for this year. But maybe Jay has some other information or more hopeful outlook for us, but unfortunately I don't.
Thank you. Jay, if you would.
Okay, I will share my screen, hopefully. I mean, if everybody else struggles with this, that helps me feel a little better, but not really. And on my presentation, after reaching out to Dr. Thayer and everything yesterday, hopefully you can see my screen currently. Is I up and going? Okay.
We can see it. Thank you.
She basically did a more in-depth look at what I was going to discuss. So I'll run through my slides and we'll get down to where we'll talk about a little more of on the ground and what I've seen and heard from producers. So, I mean, I had, same slide as she did, whoops, and we talked about the moisture and temperatures, and we all know that it is definitely hot around, and there has been no rain or precipitation, basically, and it just is verified in these slides. The question, whoops, that went too fast, but slides. Department of Ag and the governor's office has had a lot of people the public being concerned about agricultural use of water. And why isn't ag cutting back? Why is ag still irrigating in the middle of the day and some of those things? And with that, I wanted to just give you a little bit of a on the ground throughout the state from producer or people's perspective. I contacted Trevor Nilsson with Bear River Canal Company, and as you noticed on Dr. Thayer's one slide, availability, the Bear River is probably in the best shape of any of our drainage in the state. And when I talked with him, he indicated that they're doing okay. They have a lot of storage in Bear Lake, and they are pulling a lot of that storage out, trying to meet the needs of the ag community and under their system. And they're meeting a certain percentage of those producers, but anybody that's dealt with agriculture knows that if you're on the head of the ditch, it's a lot better than being on the end of the ditch. And that's what's playing out in Box Elder is, as you move down through that canal system, the guys in Box Elder County are having a lot more impact from the drought conditions than some of them higher up in the system. With that said, he indicated, he feels like his water users are kind of in a moderate drought, and that's what those slides indicated. Now, if you move to, say, southern Utah, Cedar City area, I was down there in late April, early May to visit some projects with the commissioner, and as we met with the producers and started talking about their runoff, they indicated that Cold Creek usually peaks at 300 CFS. This year it peaked at just under 60 CFS. And him, on his own operation, he goes, I have 4 wheel lines, quarter-mile wheel lines. I can usually run them till the end, middle of June. He goes, I'm running 1 wheel line 6 hours a week on his operation. So that gives you an indication of, that end of the state's not doing great. In the middle of the valley, middle of the state where I'm from in central Utah, I talked with Gunnison Irrigation Company, and they've got a reservoir. Gunnison Reservoir started out this year at 11% capacity. They received no runoff into Gunnison Reservoir this winter. It never made it down through the valley. They've got another reservoir that's 9 Mile Reservoir, and it peaked at 30% capacity and is now empty. And they are running just on what's coming off the mountain and the stream flow at 17% capacity as of today. Then on just to show on my system, we've got a system with meters and everything, so we keep pretty good track of where it is. And I'm sitting at 9%. So I can water, if I stretch my water, maybe 40 acres out of 400 acres. So on the livestock end, the livestock watering, farm service people have reported last year and continue to report this year that producers have been hauling water all last year. A lot of producers in southern Utah were spending a lot of money, cost hauling water, trying to keep their livestock on the range. And they're continuing to do that. And this year, they're even seeing more areas where they've never seen the springs or the streams dry up to nothing. And that's what's happening now. So when the public talks about agriculture because of how we irrigate, we need to help them to understand that we have cut back, not that maybe they can see, but agriculture has definitely been hit, and there is some concerns. And then if you move into the next category, We know the temperature has been just terrible. We know that there's been an increase in wind, and that's impacted our fire conditions. I mean, this year we've had more fires earlier. I've got 2 of them burning down in my area, and this is a concern. And this impacts our grazing and the availability of forage for those producers. Just a note, the Department of Ag, in conjunction with the CAT Fire group, they put out a report, and in that report it states that for every dollar spent in prevention saves $17 in suppression, and that was in 2013. I'm sure that differential has even expanded since then. So, and Dr. Thayer, she pretty well covered the crop production and the forage production and where we are. I have talked to a few people, and crop production is going to be down anywhere from 80%, maybe in northern Utah, to below 10% in southern Utah. And that's impacting those producers. And the same with the forage. The Forest Service, they sent out letters in March, April to all their allotment holders and indicated that there would be at least a 10% cut in time and in numbers, and they would evaluate that on a allotment basis with each individual allotment. And I know that there's been some concerns there. Now, if you, whoop, my finger moves too fast. Hay prices. That's very much a moving target. I've met with some producers as I've been out doing some other projects with producers and just throughout the state. One producer indicated that as they were cutting their first crop, that they had people calling saying, how much you want, how much can we get, and we'll take everything you have. And they were starting to sell it, depending on the quality, at $240 a ton, up to $280. There's been reports from producers that they've been in Idaho and found some hay and bringing it in for over $300 a ton. So there is going to be a shortage. The one producer indicated that what he's hearing through the grapevine, and maybe we should spend a little more time in the coffee shop, because the coffee shop crew seems to have a better take on where prices are than we at the Department of Ag or other places. But they think that hay is going to be between $450 to $500 a ton if you can find anything to buy. My local.
Excuse me, Mr. Olson. I guess what you're saying is, in fact, there won't be a third and fourth mow this season.
I would say probably not, and there might not even, depends on where you are in the state, there might not even be a good second cutting of hay either. I mean, and those that do get it will have a shorter supply, so there'll be less available. Like it's indicated, it looks like, the Bear River guys, maybe they'll only lose 20% of their production. Hopefully that's what it is, and not that much. But in southern Utah, it could be down as much as 90%. So
that is fantastic.
That's, it's a hard situation we're in. And I know I have a hay price processor here in town in Ephraim, and they've indicated that, they've got a lot of contracts out with a lot of producers throughout the state. And those producers are contacting them saying, we're not going to be able to meet our contract with you.
Wow.
And we're sending trucks because we want to buy some of the hay we sold you last year back, because we want to keep our cattle in production. So it's a good market if you have anything to sell, but it's not a good market if you're in the buying mode.
Okay, great. We're starting to run out of time. So
okay, do you want me to quit, or
let's look at the liquidation real quick, and then let's.
Okay, no, I apologize. I'm not trying to take
Don't
too
worry
much
about
time.
that. Don't worry.
Uh,
Ask you to speak.
On the liquidation, the auctions have been very busy, especially in the southern part of the state. There's been a lot of livestock liquidated because producers just can't afford $200 or $300 or $400 hay and justify that. The concern, Utah State University and Ruby Ward is very much familiar with this. They did an economic analysis for time-controlled grazing in the Three Creeks area in Rich County. And from that report, and Ruby, you can correct me, but for every cow unit up there, that generates $555. And then if you put the multiplier in, that generates $976 to rural communities.
That sounds about right, but that's been so many years ago since I did that. I would have to look it up, and I can find that report and send it out if people want it.
And I've got it with my notes, so I can share it also. That's what I looked at, and like you said, that was in 2012, so that's quite an old report. But that indicates that the impact that agriculture has in rural Utah. And if these producers are liquidating herds for every cow they sell, that's going to impact that rural economy at that percentage. And we all know that agriculture producers are not the youngest group, that they're, around 58 years old. And a lot of those producers might not go back into business, and that's going to impact the state. And it does take at least 3 years when the drought ends before they can get that production to come back to where they were. So with that, it's not a very good report, but we need to probably consider how can we help these producers save their herds so that we have an economy when the drought ends. And I appreciate your time. And if you have questions, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. That adds to a little bit of a downer, but it also gives us the issue. I mean, you can't give a rosy all the time, and we appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anna, Jay, thank you. Appreciate that update. I want to go now, and we're starting to run out of time to get to our subcommittees or working groups, as we call them. And I'd like to go to Bjorn and Callie. Give us an idea of what ag land preservation is talking about.
So I didn't see Bjorn on the call, so I'll go ahead and give the update.
Okay.
We just barely met yesterday as a team, and so following some presentations from other groups, we basically just identified that we need to start looking at rural ag land preservation and urban ag land preservation separately, and also where they intersect. So that's the direction we're going. We're looking at both of those factors. Yesterday, we brainstormed a few topics that we can look into. I think really right now we're just trying to identify what the barriers are, why farmers aren't continuing farms, or why they can't get access to land, or basically what's happening where ag land isn't being preserved. So that's pretty much it for us. I think now that we've heard all these presentations, especially Ari and Ryan, we'll be in touch, and I think there's more that group can expand. But as of now, we're just trying to identify what the problems are, so that hopefully we can find some solutions that this group can attack. So that's it for us.
Thank you, Callie. Our community food assessment statewide, Natalie Lutz. You're still on, Natalie? Brad Belknap.
Hi, Senator Davis. I don't know if Natalie is still on, but we have not had a chance to meet yet this month for the food assessment group. We have still been engaging internally and with some of the partners on that group around continuing this assessment. I know that Natalie's had conversations with different partners at the city, as well as with other state agencies. So the work is continuing, but we are still hoping to get a meeting on the agenda for later this month.
Great. Thank you. Innovation in production. Jack.
Thank you, Senator. We met last month, and one of the main things that we're looking at doing is trying to do some assessment and little feasibility study related to co-packing. And so Dr. Karen Allen at Utah State University and the Utah Zone program at UDAF are working together to do kind of the first step of that, to just sort of assess who are those producers out there who do co-packing or could do co-packing. What does that look like? What are those products they do co-pack or could co-pack? Where are they located? That kind of thing. And we're hoping to have a preliminary report in the next meeting of this group in 2 months in August. And so that sort of is our main thing. And then, of course, we're also spearheading the ongoing social media efforts, our Facebook page. And I think those of you that follow it, that's great. Please do follow it if you don't, Local Food Advisory Council. And it seems to be going along really well. Hopefully we'll have a little more detailed report on that next time as well. But in the interest of time, because we knew how packed the agenda was, we just thought we would leave it at that.
I wanted to chip in here to
Ruby.
say that I had messaged Jack and Ruby or Kelsey about getting those documentation from Envision Utah, and they put that in the chat that you can go get that and put what we can on that Facebook page. And everyone here on this call should go, and there are 32 people on this call. I mean, I have a note on my computer most days. I just try to go in and look at it, at least like it and share it. But we need to grow our Facebook page.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Innovations in production. Thank you. And now Ruby Ward with, we'll get this right, innovation in distribution.
Thank you. We're going to start exploring some of those issues a little bit more in depth that we don't have time for in this meeting. As you saw, all of our speakers, kind of ran out of time. And so we're going to start with our meeting in July and start to have some of those outside speakers, probably around what's going on with some of the food hubs, since that's going to be really current, and then go from there.
Great. Thank you, Ruby. Representative Handy, regulations.
Yeah, Callie, not much to report. We did have a little meeting, about a half-hour meeting, and we're trying to, it wasn't very well attended, but we need to reboot and retool and just kind of get a handle on what those things are. And maybe as we go through the things that Ryan has dug out there, those 33 items, there's some things there, Callie, we can find that might be some barriers that we can figure out how to address, some regulatory barriers. What else, Callie?
I think that's pretty much it. I'll make a note that we can look at those barriers maybe and see what we can come up with. I know Dave Evans, who's a regular attendee, he's got some stuff he wants to follow up on with a few bills that have been passed.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's right. So we're working at it.
Thank you. I would encourage everyone on the call, as a matter of fact, to get in touch with Callie and find out. I know the calendars are coming out now on where all of the working groups are meeting and when. And of course, we're still meeting virtually in most of these. But I would ask all of the members and people that are on board, if there's any of these issues that you're interested in, please jump in when it's available and join the group so that we can grow even stronger with ideas. This is really the ideas that come out of this that's really going to give us the way to the future of agriculture in the state of Utah. I want to open it up now and just kind of do an open mic for a little bit and kind of hear from everyone and get some input and retread ourselves a little bit. Anybody want to take the mic? I don't see anybody opening their microphone. So
And I mentioned,
Thank you, Commissioner, please.
sounds like I'm getting some weird feedback here, but I did speak with Representative Snyder. He's got some ideas about some ag land preservation legislation that he's looking at. His schedule this time of year, of course, with his work and supporting his family, he's pretty slammed right now, but I know he's working on some things, and I just thought I'd report on that. So.
Thank you. And not seeing anybody else jumping in here right now. I'd like to mention one thing, and then Steve, Representative Handy, I'll come to you. I think one of the things that we were looking at and talking about doing at our next meeting in August is to bring in this task force that the legislature set up on food islands and food and the need of food into our citizens' hands, and have a report from them. So that's one of the things that I'm going to put on the agenda in the future, unless there's opposition to it. So, Representative Handy, please.
Hey, I just saw Jordan. I saw Jordan get on there. How are you doing, Jordan? How are things in your world, Jordan Riley? Got anything to tell us or educate us on? He's a grower, producer. Looks like he's checked off. Anyway,
I'm here. Sorry, thank you.
Anything to report, Jordan? Tell us.
Same as what Commissioner was just talking about with Casey Snyder. There's been some interesting discussions, and I'm trying to. Well, things are heating up for me as well. It's getting a little busy, but we're trying. Hopefully, with the Ag Land Preservation Subcommittee, we can bring something to talk about, and I think that's in line with what Representative Snyder is doing as well.
How's the water situation with your orchards?
Pineview is supplying all of my area, and yeah, mostly Pineview, and they have informed us that August 1 they will shut off residential and see how long they can eke out for agricultural. But they said originally they were hoping to go till September 1, but I don't believe we'll make it that far. We'll be in August without water, and pretty worrisome. Got a lot of young trees that I'm worried about.
That's scary, this whole thing.
Yeah.
Here and trying to get forward as much as we've done to preserve water. And it's interesting that water, the residential water that you're talking about, is the secondary water in the system, right?
Yeah, and mine in Brigham City doesn't have pressurized secondary. They do have some flood irrigation systems, which is largely fed off of Pineview. But yes, yeah, there's a number of smaller water companies that for example, some of them will draw from canyon water up until late spring, and then they start pulling Pineview, and so they have a lot of allocations for Pineview water. And but this year, that if they have any ties to residential use, then they'll be shut off like the rest of them.
Wow. And that's going to dry up the apples in a hurry, right?
Yeah, I think peaches will be small this year, but they'll be sweet when there's no water going into it. Actually, it makes them compact flavor wise.
All right. That sounds good. Looks like a good apple crop from the flavor point, anyway.
Yeah,
not a bumper.
A bad from pretty much all other aspects, but yeah, pretty worrisome. So that's me and my ends. Otherwise, looking like a good crop and hoping people come out and support.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or ideas for future agendas that you'd like us to discuss as a group? Not seeing any. I will take a motion here. And
let me just say one thing.
Right.
Appreciation to Callie. She's a little under the weather this afternoon, and we appreciate what she's done to help us. Callie, what is the date of the next meeting?
It is in August. Let me just pull that up really quickly. August 26th.
Okay.
So it's Thursday, same time, Thursday, 2 to 4, August 26th.
Get it on your calendars. But I just think we're involved in really important work here, and it's so great to have Ari and Ryan on with us today and make that nexus, that connection with what the work that they're doing, and we are making progress with this. We've been at it about 3 years, and we are making progress. Look where we started and look where we are today. So just the best to all you small producers, to Jordan and all of you. We just wish you well, and stay cool, everyone, and drink little water as you possibly can.
Actually, stay hydrated.
Yes, stay hydrated. I'm
Individually.
just kidding. Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Thank you. I'll take a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Discussion? Well, I guess a motion to adjourn is not debatable. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Hi. Hi.
Take
Any
good care,
opposed?
everyone. Take good care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and see you in August.
Bye-bye.